All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our current Writing Center workshop, which is about APA formatting. We're going to talk about title pages. We're going to talk about in-text citations. We're going to talk about references pages. So get your notebooks and pencils ready. Be prepared to be amazed. And Amanda's going to take over at the beginning here. She's going to tell us about title pages and about in-text citations. So, Amanda, I'll give it over to you.
All right, well, I'm going to get us started by going into my PowerPoint here. So if you'll hang on a second, I'm going to share my screen with you. There you go. And let's get this guy out of the way. Okay, so what we have here is APA formatting is a little different than the MLA or the Chicago styles, or there's a whole bunch of other ones. And if you start out with the title page, it looks pretty much like this here is, only a few differences, such as the information will be a little bit different, but the formatting is going to look like that. So when we start a paper, we want to start it out with first gathering the types of information we're going to need. They're going to go into two areas of the paper. We'll need the page number, the title, and the student name. This is all information over here related to the assignment. It's going to be the student name, so the author of the paper. The institution name, that is the place you're at when you do the paper. So in other words, if you're at Grace Harbor, it'll be Grace Harbor College. The course name and number, again, whatever your course is, your instructor's name, and then the due date of the assignment. And it will go in that order. And this is what it will look like on the paper. You'll notice that the page number here is put up in a header, but the title it's not centered in the paper, but it's not at the top either. It's kind of somewhere midway between the top of the paper and the middle of the paper, which is roughly here. In order to put a number in a header, you first want to go to Insert down here, and you click on that. And then you're going to come over here to page number. That's right here. I didn't get a circle around that one, but anyway, that's what you're going to click on next. And you only need a page number in APA formatting. Once you've clicked on page number, it's going to come up with this box here, and you're going to click on top of page, and then you're going to click on plain number 3. Make sure that you have a number, that the number 1 is displayed. It should do it automatically, but just in case something goes wonky, you want to just double check that you are starting out with 1. Then you can close your header right over here. You hit that button right there. After you finish that, it should look similar to this paper here. You have your 1 up here in the corner, and then you can start on your title first. And then, as I said before, student name, institution name, course name and number, instructor's name, and due date of the assignment. The title is going to be placed in bold in the center of the paper. And it's going to use common capitalization rules. You're going to capitalize everything that's, well, sorry, I can't go back. But anyway, it's going to look like this. You're going to...
Amanda, I think you can go back if you hit the left button on your keyboard, like the left arrow.
There is no left button.
Oh, okay.
Hold on. Oh, don't like it. There we go. Oh, we'll get there.
No worries.
Anyway, so you're going to want to capitalize all of the main words in your title, but you don't have to worry too much about the these and the ors, all those little words. Those do not generally matter. Anyway, so what I just said is pretty much what's all on this slide here. But a couple of interesting things that I haven't mentioned yet is don't put in any abbreviations in your title. And your title can take up to 2 lines on your paper. So if it's a long title, don't worry about it. As long as it's 2 lines or less, you're good. And everything, all the text on your title page needs to be double spaced. The font size, they're not too particular in APA for their font size. They just want it to be easily readable. Most people pick like a 12 point, but you can, depending upon what font you use, you can use 11 point or even 10 point if it's a readable font. Just make sure it's easily readable. One thing you're going to want to do though is select everything on your paper around this point, and then you're going to want to come to this box right here with the 2 arrows. And you're going to want to select your 2.0. And you're going to want to hit this button, remove space after paragraph. Once you've done that, that's going to ensure that all your spacing will be even. Otherwise, you're going to get weird gaps and just very odd spacing. So a finished product would look like this, pretty much. For the in-text citation, then that's how we make sure to notate where the information that we just used came from. And you want to notate anything that you've taken from another source. So you can use direct quotation, you can summarize, but if it comes out of another book, paper, article, anything of the sort, you want to cite it. Basic APA format is in parentheses, and looks like this. Well, anyway, it comes in parentheses with a last name and a date, and sometimes a page number. It just depends upon exactly what you're citing. So for signal phrases, I put this in here because I'm going to use that term and I wanted to explain it. But a signal phrase is where you are putting in the name of the author in your sentence. So like over here, according to Jones. If you put the author's name, last name in your sentence, you're going to want to cite it slightly differently. In this case, you follow the name with the date. And then at the end of your quote, or at the end of your quote, you put your page number. For capitalization, again, it's all typical capitalization pretty much. It's nothing unusual. Just make sure you capitalize all the main words and proper names. If you have 2 authors, you're going to name both of them, both of their last names in the citation, as in right over here. Down here. The Wegner and Petty, they're both 2 different authors, but they're both of one article, and you cite both of them. You use an ampersand, which is this funny little S-shaped thing right in between the words. And again, you follow it up with the date. If you're doing an exact page number, like you're taking a specific quote from a specific page, then you include the page number. If you do more than one page number, then it's PP and page number. If you have 3 or more authors, we're in luck. They finally changed their system. I'm happy to say this. It's way easier now. You just have to list the first author's name, followed by et al. Make sure you only put a period after the al, though. There's no period here. So it's going to look like this. And again, if you have a specific page number, you add it. If you don't add it. But when you have no authors, sometimes, I don't know, there's some wonky ones out there where you have no idea where it came from. That's when you just use the first word or two in the title. You place it in quotation marks. So in this case, it looks like this one here. Using citations is like the first two words of the list of the article that a lot of this information came from, which came off of Purdue OWL, by the way. If you have sources that don't have any page numbers, you just pick a substitute. Like if you have, one of the ones they mentioned that's not actually, that I didn't put in this PowerPoint, but like Bibles don't have necessarily page numbers, or they vary from book to book all the time. So you can use like verse numbers, a paragraph number. You can use chapter numbers, anything in this blue list here pretty much, or whatever makes sense. The whole purpose of adding page numbers, chapter numbers, etc., is to direct the person reading the article that you're writing to where you got the information. And if you don't direct them specifically, they'll think you got it from a whole book, and they might search for 20 years to find that one little quote you used. So that's what all this is for, basically. There's a difference between direct quotations and summarizing. For a direct quotation, that's where you actually take a different source's words, so different author's words, and you take them exactly as the original author wrote them. Those get placed in quotation marks, which are these little guys right here. And then you have to follow it up with an in-text citation. You only want to do that in 3 situations. If you're doing an exact definition, or when an author said something memorable, or when you want to respond to exact wording. If it's like perfect for what you're trying to say literally, then you can use the quotation marks. But you definitely want to try to use your own wordings as much as you can.
I'm going to jump in here real quick and just say that we have we've got a future workshop on that subject of quoting and paraphrasing. APA, they hit it kind of hard in their chapter on in-text citations. They kind of explain the differences when you should paraphrase, when you should quote. And so we'll go over that in a whole other workshop in case folks are interested later this quarter. So check that out. Just want to give that shout out. Thanks. Back to you, Amanda.
Okay, thank you. So for an in-text citation, for a direct quote, you just need the author's last name, year of publication, and page number. Again, it's not much different than the rest. Occasionally you won't have a page number, but usually if you're doing a direct quote, you can find a page number. But if you can't, then refer back to the other slide where you want to use a paragraph or anything that will tell the author where you got that quote from. And then you want to use a P for one page, or PP if you're doing multiple pages. And when you do page ranges, such as from page 1 to 5, you use what's called an in dash. This is how it looks, an in dash, and that's this line right there. So here's an example of this where someone quoted, students often had difficulty using APA style. Jones, comma, I forgot to go over commas, but that's where a comma would go in an in-text citation. The date, comma, page number, period, and then the page they took it from. This part here is not part of the actual quote because that's her own thinking, or his own, whomever's writing this. Anyway, they don't have to cite their own work, just somebody else's work. So that's why this citation here is placed after the quotation mark, but before all of this. When you paraphrase a source, that's when you take something that you like or you're understanding and you are putting it into your own words. Sometimes you're summarizing an entire article and you're not really taking any one or two words out of the article. You're just, for instance, I could summarize Purdue OWL and simply say that in Purdue OWL, they teach us the methods of citations. I'm just summarizing a whole block of information there. It's not one thing I could cite. But because I took this out of Purdue OWL, I would still have to cite it, but it would be considered paraphrasing the cite. In this case, I don't need a page number. I even have to worry about looking for one, nothing. I just need the author's last name and year of publication. In this case here, this is a section I took from one of the papers that I've done, and I just summarized this paper where it came from, Harrington, 2005. And then I say here, APA recommends that you paraphrase more than quote. I kind of liken that to if people wanted to read the articles, they would go read the original articles, but they're reading your article, so you want your words in your article. That's kind of how I look at it. One special oddity in APA is block quotations. I included it here because APA is typically used for scientific things, and sometimes those can be very lengthy quotes. And so that's why I put this here. A block quotation is any direct quote that's longer than 40 words. It's okay to use a long quote if you need to, but when you do use it, it has to be formatted properly. First thing you're going to do is omit the quotation marks on it. That sounds kind of odd, honestly, because you're always taught to quote everything with quotation marks. But for block quotations instead, you're going to start the quotation on a new line, and you'll indent a ½ inch from the left margin. So just like you're beginning a whole new paragraph. The entire quotation is going to be indented by that ½ inch. So it's like every single line is a whole new paragraph. It's kind of, I don't know. I'll show you an example in a minute, but it is kind of interesting. You want to maintain a double spacing throughout, just like the rest of your paper. You don't want any extra blank lines before it or after it, no fancy marks. Just keep your paper running smooth with that double spacing. And then for citing it, you're going to just use the quotation in text citation, just like you would for a regular quote. Which in this case, here's probably an easier way to understand it. This section right here, the Oscar system, all the way down to the red line here, that is considered a block quote. There's more than 40 words in it. Over here in the purple, you'll see the whole thing is indented by ½ inch. And you'll notice there are no quotation marks around the V, even though it is a quote. It is a direct quote, but it's not got a quotation mark because it has this ½ inch indent labeling it as a block quotation. And then the citation at the very end is just like the regular. You have your last name, comma, date, comma, the page number where it came from. And they're enclosed in parentheses. And that's it as far as my presentation goes, so I'm going to send you back to Tom.
All right. Thanks very much. Oops, I had muted myself. Thanks very much, Amanda. All right. Great job with the presentation. That was fantastic. So we've learned so far about the in-text citations and about the title page. So now I'm going to talk to you all about the references page, which is what appears at the end of your APA paper. And let's see, let me pull up or share my screen, and I will pull up the PowerPoint here. Okay. All right. So this is what a references page typically looks like, right? So we've got, let me move this down here. Okay, so we have got, I've got stuff, like videos are in front of everything. Okay, there we go. So we've got a level 1 heading for the references at the top of the page, and we call it references in APA. You may be familiar with MLA, which calls it works cited, or maybe with Chicago style, which calls it the bibliography. In APA, they call it references. You'll have hanging indents, which are 1/2 inch, and you can see those here. They're kind of carved out on the side. So it's the opposite of a traditional indent. Everything should be double spaced, just the same way the rest of your paper is, and remove space after paragraph. And everything should be in alphabetical order according to whatever word appears at the very beginning. So we have A followed by B, and then Robbins and Whitehead, so it's kind of all in alphabetical order. All right. So before we get started, I just want to point out that it's really helpful to think of this as a skill that you can learn. You don't have to memorize all the rules of this handy-dandy APA manual in order to create your references page. You don't have to memorize all of it. You just need to know where to find it. So you can use resources like the Writing Center, the Purdue OWL, and YouTube to get this information. So you can just go to Google or Bing or whatever you like and type in Purdue OWL APA references pages. And you'll find a treasure trove of information that'll help you create your references page. You can go to YouTube and type in, just type in APA 7th edition title page, and you'll find tons of helpful visual references where people talk through creating this type of page. So I encourage you guys to take those steps to get the information that you need so you can do the work yourself. I caution you about using automatic reference creation software. So for example, in Microsoft Word, there is a feature that allows you, that Microsoft Word will create the references for you. And students can get really excited about that until they've used it for a couple days and suddenly are trying to unknot a bunch of knots tied in their paper by the references. And Amanda's kind of nodding there. We deal with this in the Writing Center pretty frequently, and it can be annoying if you've put your effort into adding your references to the Microsoft Word, but you can't get it to format it the way that it's supposed to because something in the system is triggering something and we don't know how to undo it. EasyBib is kind of the same thing. You can plug in all of your information and it'll spit out a bunch of references, but you need to be able to go in and double check and make sure that those are accurate. So you'll need to learn at least at some level how to do this. So I encourage you, learn it enough that you can do it yourself. I think of this as kind of like, imagine you're like creating, a recipe and you add all the flour and sugar and all this stuff into the bowl. And then you realize that all of the ingredients were wrong. All the measurements were wrong, or somebody else did that step for you. Maybe your children put the flour and the yeast and everything in together, and then you find out that they put in the totally wrong proportions. Well, now you have to go in and try to sift it all out. Not possible, right? Much easier to just start over in that case. And so you'll want to learn how to do it yourself. So we'll talk about two types of sources for this references portion of the presentation. We'll talk about journal articles because those are very frequently required in APA papers or in the types of assignments that you'll do in your classes at Grace Harbor College, and for authored books. So typically I see students in the Writing Center and they're working with textbooks for their classes or books that they've checked out from the library. And so we'll talk about how to create a reference entry for those as well. There are 4 elements to a reference, and let me rearrange some of this so that you can see everything at the bottom of the screen here. This Zoom thing is in the way. Okay, so there's 4 elements of a reference. The first one is the author, which you can see here in the purple. So who's responsible for the work? The date is in yellow here. When was this work published? The title, so what is the work called? You can see that in green. And then the source, so information about the source. So the source is just telling your reader where can they retrieve this work. If they go to the library or if they go to the internet to find it, how will they locate it? So remember, we're talking about journal articles here. So names appear in last, first, and middle order. So you can see author AA, author BB, and author CC. First and middle names are always abbreviated. So my full name is Thomas Michael Stearns, and my name would appear in a references list as Stearns, T period M period. If no middle initial is provided, you just use the first initial. So if I authored a work and I published it under the name Tom Stearns without a middle initial, then you would just put that into the references page as Stearns, T period. Done. You'll never include titles like PhD, MA, LMHC, DDS, stuff like that. So those will frequently appear in the author's information in a journal article or in a work. But just because they appear in the article doesn't mean that you include them in your references list. It's kind of too much information for a references list to include that. So when multiple authors exist, like in this example, you'll list them in the order that they're displayed on the title page of the original work. And we'll take a look at that in a minute when we do our example paper. Write out all authors' names unless there are 21 or more authors. 21 is a lot of authors, but you'd be surprised. There are a lot of articles written out there that are authored by more than 20 people. That said, we don't run into that very much in most of the papers that I see in the Writing Center at Grays Harbor. It's mostly, those types of papers are mostly very specific, like medical papers. I don't see a lot of those. So you'll always write out all the authors' names unless you have a whole lot. You use commas to make clear which initials belong to which name. So notice that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 commas in this list of 3 authors. So author, comma, initials, comma, last name, comma, initials, comma, and last name, comma, initials. Use an ampersand before the final name in the list. You use a single space between initials. So that seems maybe like insignificant, but it's actually quite significant. So APA insists that you put that space between those two initials. Use a single space after each comma and after each period. And this is really important too, because this helps your reader distinguish and recognize that this BB belongs to this name author here. And I just realized this says after each comma, but I want you to, and after each period, but I want you to note that after the periods of initials, you don't put a space after that period. Any inseparable names like Plato or Lady Gaga, you would write those out, not abbreviate or invert them. So if you were citing something that Lady Gaga wrote, you wouldn't write Gaga, comma, L period, because that's not like a traditional first and last name. You'll write the author's surname exactly as it appears in the work, including hyphenated surnames and two-part surnames. So sometimes people have last names that are hyphenated, like if someone's name is Doug Smith Collins or John Paul Smith Collins, as in this case, then you would write their name as Smith Collins, comma, J period, P period. Or if the name is Ana Luisa Delgado Torres, then you would write that name as Delgado Torres, comma, A period, L period. Oop, I already mentioned that. Sometimes the work is published by a group instead of by individuals. So sometimes we don't have authors' names associated with the group because it's authored by a particular government agency or by a hospital or an organization. So in these cases, you'll spell out the group name and don't abbreviate it. So for example, if you took a publication by the National Institute of Mental Health, then you would write out here National Institute of Mental Health, and then provide the year, the title, etc. So for more information about that, check out the APA manual on page 288. There's lots of detailed examples. So that's everything and more about the authors. Now let's talk about the year. What do you put in this yellow space here? So the date could appear in different forms depending on the work. So if the work only provides the year, then you just put the year, 2017. Ooh, I stopped it. Okay. I had a sneeze coming there. Pardon me. You got a year, month, and day. Then you would put all of that information, and it would appear like this: the year, comma, and then the month, and then the day. You wouldn't write March 12th, comma, 2017. The year and the month, so 2017, comma, March. The year and the season. Sometimes journals are published on a seasonal basis, so you would provide 2017, comma, and then summer or spring or fall. The range of dates. Sometimes journals are published and they have ranges of dates, like January, February article or edition, the March, April edition, etc. Then you would write them just like that. So sometimes this is not how the dates are going to appear in your sources. Sometimes the source, the way it appears in the source, is going to say, for example, 3/12/17, if you're citing a web page or something like that. And even though it appears that way in the article, you need to cite it in this way, this recommended way by APA. So that's something to pay attention to. One extra thing, this is for if you're citing web pages. This doesn't occur very often, but if you're referencing a web pages that has been updated, you use the updated date rather than an overarching website date or an original publication date. So just include the most recent date. You'll use retrieval dates only in certain situations, only for sources that change frequently, like a dictionary, a Twitter profile, a Google Map information, something like that. Those are the only times where you provide retrieved information. And so that's where you would add a line with add a line here next to the year and say, retrieved May 4th, 2020 from blah, blah, blah. Most websites are not changing frequently, like a Twitter profile, for example. So then you would not need to tell your reader what date you retrieved it. All right, so that's it for the year. Let's talk about the title of the article. When your work appears in part of a larger publication, you've got two titles that you're working with. You've got the title of the component work, and that's, for example, the article title, the web page title, the chapter title. That's what appears before the title of the standalone work. So that's the green part right here. So for example, if I'm working with an academic journal article, the journal might have a title. For example, the Journal of the American Medical Association. But then the article also has a title, for example, Discoveries in Diabetes Research. And so that title of the article, Discoveries in Diabetes Research, would appear first before the Journal of the American Medical Association. Don't use quotation marks. Don't use italics for the title of an article. Just type it like a regular sentence. This is a little counterintuitive, but for a title of the article, just regular typing here. I want you to note, though, and we'll get to this in a second, but this one, the title of the periodical, will be italicized. So this is really important because this is the way that your reader distinguishes between the article title and the periodical title. So titles for articles and other works that appear in part of a larger publication should not be written in title case, but in sentence case. This is what Amanda was talking about earlier with, words with 4 or more letters should be capitalized. So for example, when we have an article title, we don't do that. We don't do the title case. So if the title of our article is Social Media Mobilization in Taiwan, then this is a correct capitalization for this title. An incorrect capitalization for this title might look like this: Social Media Mobilization in Taiwan, where media and mobilization are both capitalized. Now this is a little bit tricky because if I look at this article in the journal, probably those S's, M's, and T's are all capitalized, but you shouldn't be capitalizing the M's in your reference list. So it's not enough to just copy paste the title. You'll need to format it and make sure that the article title is capitalized correctly. You might also notice that the T in Taiwan is capitalized, whereas the M's in media mobilization are not. And the reason for that is because Taiwan is a proper noun, so it's the name of a place. So names of people, names of places, proper nouns should always be capitalized, even if they're in the title of an article. You should also capitalize the first letter of a subtitle. If there's a two-part title to it, that first letter will always be capitalized. And notice you should include a period at the end. So even though the article is part of the periodical, sometimes students want to put a comma there to show that they're connected, but you don't want to do that. You want to put a period so the reader has a very clear indication. This is the end of the title of the article, and now we're moving on to the title of the periodical. All right, title of the periodical. And that term periodical, you may have heard that before, but if not, that means that it's any publication that comes out on a periodic basis over a certain period of time. So for example, a newspaper could be a daily periodical or a weekly periodical. Most journals are either monthly periodicals or seasonal periodicals. There might be 12 issues in a year, or there might be 4 issues in a year if it's seasonal. So the titles for standalone works or periodicals should appear in title case. So this includes academic journals, websites, newspapers. So titles of standalone works should be italicized as well. So for example, the one we were thinking about earlier, the Journal of the American Medical Association, that title of that journal should be written in title case and it should be italicized. Standalone works often have editions and volumes, etc., and we're focusing in this one on journal articles. Most journal articles will have a volume number and an issue number. So in a volume number there's usually a new volume number every year. So the first year that they started publishing that journal, that was volume 1. Then the second year they started publishing that journal, that was volume 2, etc. But within a year, they might publish the journal 4 times or 6 times or 12 times, and so each issue will also have a number. So academic journals usually have both, and so you'll want to include both of these things. So you put a comma after the journal title, and then you provide the volume number in italics and put the issue number in parentheses, not in italics. Note that there's no space between the volume number and the issue number, which is kind of funky. We normally put a space before parentheses, right? Not in this case. And even funkier, notice that the volume number appears in italics, while the issue number does not appear in italics. That's just very unique. APA is very special. So after the issue number, you should enter a comma, and then put the page span of the article. Lastly, and you put a period after pages. Then lastly, you'll have the DOI. DOI stands for the Digital Object Identifier, and many journal articles, especially in the health and medical fields, include a DOI. So if a DOI is listed in your article, you'll cite it in HTTPS format. And you can see an example down here, https://doi.org/ and then it's usually a series of numbers. If no DOI is listed, don't worry about it, and then you don't provide any URL information. So you might have found the journal article in, let's say, in the library's website. You don't need to include like the GHC library website for this. This is enough information to locate that source. But the DOI, it's a special kind of handy source that's very easy for readers to access that information just by copy pasting that. So if you do have a DOI, include that information. All right, so all of that was for journal articles, but now let's talk about, let's say we have a book and we need to cite that book. Then we'll provide similar information. So the guidelines for displaying the author and the year are pretty much the same as for journal articles. So you have the author's name and then the year in parentheses, notice periods after each one. The title of the book is going to be written in italics and in title case. So you can think of the title of the book as similar to the title of a journal. Any addition information should be provided, not in italics. So if you're citing your textbook from your class, your textbook probably has different editions, maybe 2nd edition, 3rd edition, etc. So whatever edition it is, you would put that in the title section here, but notice that it's not in italics. You'll put the name of the publishing company, And it's going to appear just like that with a period at the end. And then if a DOI is available, that's normally not a thing for books, but if there is a DOI, you would provide it just the same as for a journal article. All right, that's it. So before we move on we're going to show you now how to do these things in Microsoft Word. But before we move on, I just want to check and see if anyone in the audience has any questions.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
You said that you're recording this and you're going to put it on the Writing Center's page. Is there already some recorded information on there? Because I couldn't find that area where it's at.
It's on the Writing Center page in Canvas. So if you go to Canvas and go to any of your courses, and on the left navigation bar, there should be something that says Writing Center, and then you can click there, and it should have all of the links at the bottom. But thanks, that's some good feedback. We haven't included them on the main website just because we don't have direct access to edit that. We have to put in a request every time. But it may be worth it so that people can locate them more easily. So we might pursue that. Thanks. All right. If there's no other questions, then I think I'll turn it back over to Amanda, and then we'll take a look at Microsoft Word. Amanda's going to show us how to create a title page, and then I'll show you all how to create a references page. So Amanda, you can take it away.
Alrighty. So let's get words up here for a minute. Okay. As Tom mentioned earlier, we don't typically memorize all this information because they change it every time you turn around. So I'm also going to kind of split my screen and do PowerPoints just so I make sure I do it right. Because like I said, I don't have it all memorized. There we go.
Amanda, just so you know, we only see your Microsoft Word, and that may be what you intended, but
handy. Great. Well, anyway, I don't know how to share both screens, so that's okay.
That's okay. You can refer to it, and no one's the wiser.
All right. Well, I'm happy with that. So anyway, the first thing we're going to want to do is go do a header. We're going to go to Insert. You know what? Better do this in a big page so you guys can see the things. Then we're going to go over here to Page Number. Click on that. Hit top of page. And page number 3. As you can see here, it automatically puts a 1 here, but that's where you just want to make sure it does say 1 instead of 5 or 10 or something weird. Then you can close your header and footer. The next thing you're going to want to do is add your title of the paper. So, I don't know. Sorry, I don't know how else to make the title longer, so we're just going to pretend that's words.
It's an excellent title.
It'll work. Anyway,
Makes me feel a little hungry.
Bolded, and it will be centered. These boxes right here, they change how your formatting is on your paper. So, for instance, if I pick this one, it'll move it all the way over here to this side. But for centering, you're going to want it this one right here. That's going to center your paper. I have no idea why all these M's aren't up here. Oh, yes, I do know. Okay. There. Now it looks like a title, sort of. Anyway, I just kind of go down because you just want to guess. You don't have to do it precisely, but I do here. I'm going to make this smaller just so you can kind of get an idea for where it looks like on the paper. But I put it roughly around that area. It's not quite the middle, but it's not down too far either. There. Let's see what in the world I'm doing. The next thing we're gonna want to do is, let's select everything here, like I said, and we're going to go here to this box, and we're going to select 2.0 font, and we're going to go down here to remove space after paragraph. We're going to hit that. That'll make sure all of our typing is accurate. So once you're done with the title of the paper, then you go down one and then one more gap. You want to leave a line right there. And then you're going to put your student name. So that's going to go next. And then you're going to want the institution name, which will be Grace Harbor in this case. If you move on to another college, then it's wherever you are at. After that, you want the course name and the number. So let's just do English 235, which I believe is technical writing. Whoa, what? We'll just do that again. And then after that, I believe it's teacher next. Yep, your instructor's name. So again, we'll just say there. And then your due date. Just don't forget, it needs to be the date the paper is due to be handed in, and not just the date you're working on it. So in this case, we're going to say this paper is due to be handed in October 9th, 2020. Yep. Okay. After that, you are ready to roll. This paper is considered finished, and you literally just go all the way down until you hit your next paper. When you start your next paper, you see this is still on the middle. You're going to want to move it over there. That way you start your paper on the side, and then you can start indenting.
Amanda, sorry to interrupt. Can we go back to the title page real quick? There's just a couple things we want to touch on real quick.
Whoops.
Oops.
Okay, we're at.
Oh yeah, so with the bolding, how would you handle the bolding?
Oh. Didn't notice that. Yes, the bolding is only supposed to be up here. I did not realize I was still on the bold. Anyway, so in that case, you can just select it all, and you can hit that B, and you can just remove the bold.
Thanks. And I'm gonna put on my English professor glasses for just a minute here, and I think you might, if I was going to give one bit of punctuation feedback here, what do you think I might say?
The semicolon?
Yeah.
I thought it was that. That's what I get. Let's see what does my PowerPoint say? Probably doesn't say anything. Okay.
Here's a rule of thumb for semicolons, and this is helpful for recognizing how. So semicolons separate information. Colons connect information. Yes, and so technical writing is English 235. So you're making a connection there, not a separation.
And this is why I don't have everything memorized.
Exactly, yes. We don't need to memorize all of these things just to be successful. But it's helpful to get feedback, pop by the Writing Center and get a little feedback before you turn things in, etc. Great. All right, carry on. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, actually, that's the funny thing. I'm actually pretty much done with that.
Right.
All right. Yeah, I don't, because there's examples of the in-text citation throughout the PowerPoint. So.
Yeah. All right.
All right. So I'm going to hand it back to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Amanda. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and talk about how to do the, oops, let me get out of this. How to do the references page in Microsoft Word. So here I've got kind of the same thing that Amanda was just working with, right? I've got the title of the paper, the name of the student, Grace Harbor College, the class name, the instructor, and then the due date. And so here on the second page, I've got the title of my paper in bold level 1 headings. And notice if you, let's say this is your introduction section, just so you know, oops. One thing that you don't do is you don't provide an introduction title here. You just jump straight into your introduction like that. So here's the body of your paper, and you've got the first section of your paper. So your first section, you'll also use a level 1 heading. And maybe within your first section, you've got subsections. So your first subsection would have a level 2 heading, which is flush left, but it's still going to be bold, and it's still going to be title case, just like you see here. Your second subsection, so maybe that first section had 2 component sections. And now here we go back to a level 1 heading, and that signals to your reader, hey, we're starting a whole new section. So if I zoom out just a little bit, the reader can tell here, let me move this all on one page. The reader can tell here that this is all the first section, and it's divided up into these 2 subsections. And now here's the start of the third section. And now it's divided up into subsections. So for this reason, these details for the APA formatting are really important to pay attention to, because it gives subtle information to the reader about what they're reading, and so they can stay on track and not get confused. But so Amanda or Colleen, I'm going to give you guys a pop quiz. What's wrong with my spacing or my formatting right now with the body of my paper? Is this correct?
It's not double.
Good. Okay, it's not double spaced. Anything else?
Looks like you have gaps in your spacing.
Yes.
Like extra.
There's a little extra space between each of those paragraphs. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select all of this. I'm going to make it double spaced, but then, yeah, you'll notice that even with double spaced, it's harder to tell now, but it's still got the extra space between those sections, between each paragraphs. So not only am I going to double space it, but then I'll also select here this remove space after paragraph. Notice the difference between the two. It really makes a big difference. So again, you'll always want to do double spaced and remove space after paragraph. If it says add space after paragraph, that's what it should say. And you don't want to add that space. You want to remove it. So, okay, great, good work. All right, so now here's the end of my paper. I'm going to jump to a new page. And now at the top of the page, I'm going to write references, not references, references. There we go. All right. And notice I've got my indent still kind of going on here. I want to make sure I have no indent happening at the beginning. And let me show you all a sample journal article. So here's my word over here, and here's my journal article right here. So let's say this is a journal article I'm using in my education class. So the first thing I'm going to provide is the author's information. And you can see we've got 3 authors here, Alfredo Bautista, Zinio Yao, and Joanne Wong. So I'm going to write this information like this. First, I'm going to start with the author's last name, and then initial. Then I'm going to go to the second author, whose name is Zinnia Yao. So I'm going to put her last name first, and then her first initial. And then I'm going to put a comma and an ampersand. And then, again, last name of the author and first initial, which is J. Then a period at the end. Next, I'm going to open up and the parentheses to provide the year. And in most journal articles that you download as PDFs, like as you're doing your research with journal articles, etc., I strongly encourage you to download the PDF. You might find a splash page where there's other information, but you want to find the PDF itself. Oops, I clicked on that by mistake and now it's taking me there. Okay, let's go back. Overzealous computer here. All right, it's wanting to show off. Okay, so, but notice what I clicked on by mistake was the DOI that we were talking about earlier. That's what I was talking about. That DOI is just an instant link to the article information that you're looking for. Anyway, what I need here is the year. So you'll often find this type of information in the PDF, and either in the header or sometimes it's in the footer of that page, of each page of the document. So I will put here 2017, that's the year it was published. And now, next is going to be the title of the article, which is High Quality Music Teacher Professional Development, a Review of the Literature. So one thing that I need to do here is I have a subtitle. We were talking about that earlier. Sometimes you have a title and a subtitle. The title is High Quality Music Teacher Professional Development. The subtitle is A Review of the Literature. Subtitles, even in with the article title, subtitles should have the first word capitalized no matter what. So I'm going to capitalize that A. All right, at the end of my article title, like I said, I'm putting a period, and now I'm going to start in on the journal title. And pop quiz, Amanda or Colleen, what's the title of the journal that this article appeared in? Can you tell?
Rutledge.
Good guess. That's going to be, so Rutledge, Taylor, and Francis Group, that's actually the name of the publication company that produced this journal, and they produce hundreds of journals, yeah.
The National Institute of Education.
Good guess. So National Institution of Education. Notice here, National Institute of Education, Education and Cognitive Development Lab, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore, Singapore. I think that information is telling us where these people work or what their affiliations are. Kind of like at the start of my page, right, I put Bobbert student, Grace Harbor College. So they're putting their name and then their affiliations here too. Good guesses, though. But think, this is the title of a journal that gets published every year in different volumes and numbers.
I was going to say the music education research.
Yeah, so
top.
Yeah, that nitty-gritty information up here, it might seem insignificant. This is actually very key for your developing your references list. So yeah, this is from a journal titled Music Education Research. All right, and then the volume number is going to be 19. Oops, so I put a comma and the volume number. And then I put the issue number, which is 4, in parentheses. So again, it's very small here, but you can see, I'm going to zoom in on this if I can. There we go. So yeah, so the volume number and issue number you can see right up there. And then I'm going to put a comma and the page span. And you might think, well, the page span here, well, this is page 1 of 16. So my page span is 1 through 16, right? Well, actually, this PDF file, this appeared originally as part of a larger journal. And this appeared on page 455 through 469 of that journal. So this is a huge journal, like very, very, very thick volume that they published, right? So I want to put those page numbers, not the 1 through 16 that my PDF says. So that's going to be 455 through 469, period. Now before I move on though, I need to make sure that I put my title in italics and the volume number in italics, but not the issue number. So it's going to look like that, and I'll zoom in on this one too just so you can really tell the difference here. So yeah, title is in italics, the volume number is in italics, but the issue number is in parentheses, none of that's in italics. All right. Now, the last thing I need to include is the DOI number. I'm going to try and copy paste this if I can. Oh, no fair. Oh, there we go. Okay. Now notice when I paste it, it gets a little funky here. I'm going to paste as plain text, and I'm going to remove all that extra information I didn't actually need. Oh, that's something I do need. Okay. Yep. There we go. Okay. So now you might think, oh, this looks really weird because this goes on to the next line. That's okay because this is a long URL. But what's confusing about it is this looks like it's starting a new line, right? This is one of the reasons why we need a hanging indent. So to create a hanging indent, you're going to select all the text of your references, go up to the paragraph section in Microsoft Word, click on paragraph settings, and under indentation, select hanging indent, 0.5 inch. And when you hit OK, it's going to create a hanging indent there. It's perfect. It starts on the left line, but then every subsequent line is flush left. Now if I start a new line, then it's, oops. Notice how it's defaulting to that hanging indent again, so that's great. So the other thing I want to say here is I know a lot of folks use Google Docs, and the hanging indent feature is available in Google Docs. It's in a slightly different location. I don't have Google Docs open, but if you go to YouTube and you type in hanging indent Google Docs, you will find a very easy instructional video to help you figure that out. Or just stop by the Writing Center. We're happy to show you how to do that. It's very easy. Okay. That's it. That's our reference entry. And so it should look something like that. So that's all we've got for today. If there are any more questions, we're happy to take them. Otherwise, we'll wrap up for today. Any questions?
Sure. You were saying that we could see the Writing Center on Canvas. And I'm logging in there, but I don't see it.
So if you go into any of your classes that you're currently in, on the left side where you see things like discussions, grades, modules, etc., there should be some links that say things like e-tutoring and the Writing Center.
The Writing Center will be the very last thing on the list.
Yeah.
Okay, I did find it on one of my classes. For some reason, it wasn't on both of them, and I was clicking on the one that didn't have it. So I did find it. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
All right, great. All right, any other questions? All good? Okay, well, thank you all for your participation. Thanks again, Amanda, for your presentation. And again, if anybody has any questions about how to do any of the stuff that we've talked about today, please stop by the Writing Center. Like I said, we're open on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and we have Sunday appointments available as well. You can drop in or you can make an appointment ahead of time. Just visit our website in Canvas to find out more. Hope you all have a great day.